The envelope was thick, with the kind of legal weight that could undo years of sacrifice in a single sentence. I found it on the hallway table, wedged beneath a stack of mail, as if it were just another bill. But I knew immediately. Even before I read the words, I felt the end coming. Notice to vacate. I stood there barefoot on the hardwood floor I'd refinished myself 2 summers ago, the scent of varnish still embedded in memory. My sister, Elise, leaned against the doorframe of the living room. Her posture was casual. Too casual. She wasn't surprised. She knew. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "It's just that, things are shifting. We need to reevaluate some long-term priorities." Priorities. 2 years ago, I gave her everything. After our parents died, our mother in the hospital after years of decline, our father weeks later from what doctors called a silent heart attack, I was the one who stepped in. I took over the house, not for profit or control, but to keep it alive. Elise, who'd always lived in the city, wasn't ready to take on the responsibility. She said she needed space to grieve. I believed her. She asked if I could manage the upkeep. I did more than that. I moved back in, left my job in architecture, and took up freelance work. I kept the garden alive. I kept their room untouched. I even paid the taxes the estate hadn't covered. A year in, Elise asked if I'd co-sign a refinance so she could invest in a boutique hotel project her partner was launching. I said yes. I always said yes. Now she was selling the house. And I was no longer part of her plan. I stared at her, at this woman who once tied a string around my wrist during a thunderstorm when we were kids so I wouldn't be scared. "You're evicting me." "It's not like that," she said. But it was exactly like that. We grew up in that house on Chestnut Hill, a long sloping yard, brick steps, ivy climbing up the east side like it had somewhere to go. The backyard had a rusted swing set and a crooked shed that smelled like old paint and pine. Dad built the shed. Mom planted the roses that kept coming back, no matter how many winters tried to bury them. Elise and I weren't always close, but we were always tethered. When she got her first period, she told me before she told Mom. When I broke my arm falling off the neighbor's fence, she cried more than I did. We shared the kind of bond that felt like a secret handshake, unspoken, unbreakable. But time stretches things. College pulled us in opposite directions, her to the city, me to the West Coast. I studied architecture. She studied design. She found friends with sharp laughs and rooftop apartments. I found quiet coffee shops and plans for things that would outlive me. Our parents were anchors. Even when the rope frayed, they held us. When Mom got sick, I came back every month to help with appointments, to manage bills, to fix the faucet she kept forgetting to mention. Elise came when she could, usually with flowers and expensive groceries. When Mom passed, Dad folded in on himself. He died weeks later, not from any diagnosed condition, but from the kind of grief that unplugs something essential. The kind no doctor can fix. Suddenly, it was just Elise and me. The house passed to both of us equally. She didn't want it. Not then. Said it reminded her of hospital beds and casseroles from neighbors she didn't know. "I can't stay here," she said. "But I can't sell it either. Not yet." I understood. So I offered. "Let me live here. I'll take care of it. You do what you need to do." She agreed, even thanked me. I left my job and came home. Started freelancing. I spent long mornings repairing the porch railing, repainting the window trim. I found peace in repetition. The house gave me something to hold when everything else felt like sand. I kept our parents' room exactly the same. Their slippers still tucked under the bed. Their books still marked halfway through. I watered Mom's roses. Fixed Dad's old workbench. I didn't need applause. I just needed the place to stay whole. Elise called often at first. Sent money when she could. We even talked about future plans, turning the attic into a studio, maybe renting out the basement. Then she met Jordan. And everything began to shift. Jordan was the kind of man who called everything an opportunity. He pitched her the hotel idea over dinner, and by morning she was asking me to help her secure the down payment. "I can't do this without your name on the refinance," she said. "Just for now. You trust me, right?" I did. I signed. The next year blurred. Elise traveled a lot. She came home less. The calls slowed. The roses bloomed again. I refinished the floors and rewired the upstairs hallway. And then, without a warning, she showed up with that envelope. Not a conversation. Not a discussion. Just a notice. She didn't even look nervous. That's what shocked me the most. Elise had always been expressive, fiery, passionate, incapable of keeping her emotions to herself. But the day she handed me the envelope, she was businesslike. Calm. Like she'd already separated the act from the consequences. I opened the letter with shaking hands. It was typed, formal, full of phrases like, intent to sell, vacate within 30 days, and, property control under primary title holder. Legal words that said what she couldn't, or wouldn't, say to my face. "You're selling it," I said slowly, not asking. She nodded, adjusting her coat. "It's just time. Jordan and I have been looking at investment opportunities, and the market's in a sweet spot. We figured it was best to strike while it's high." She shrugged. "We're partners now. Business and otherwise." I stared at her. "You mean he's deciding this with you? About our family's home?" "It's not just a home anymore," she said. "It's an asset. And it's under my name." "No," I said. "It's under both our names. We split it." She hesitated, then glanced away. "You signed over your share in the refinance. Technically, legally, it's mine now." I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. My memory raced back, months ago, at her kitchen table, her hand on my arm, her voice soft, just a formality. "I'll add you back on after the papers clear." "You lied," I whispered. Her eyes narrowed. "I did what I had to do." "No," I said. "You did what was easy." She folded her arms, hardening. "Don't make this dramatic. You said you didn't want to live here forever. You said it was temporary. I said that 2 years ago. I stayed to preserve it. I gave up my job. I rebuilt this place by hand. You haven't set foot in this house more than 5 times since Dad died." She glanced at the hallway, at the staircase she used to slide down in socks. "It's just a house, Matt." "No," I said, voice shaking. "It's our history." That night, I walked through every room like a stranger. The paint I chose. The light fixtures I replaced. The garden I kept alive for Mom. And none of it mattered. Because Elise had already moved on. And she was leaving me behind. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch in the living room, one I'd built myself with reclaimed walnut and worn linen cushions, staring at the ceiling, counting every crack like it could spell out some kind of answer. The silence wasn't peaceful. It pressed in, thick and suffocating. Every sound became a betrayal, the hum of the fridge, the wind scraping a branch against the window, the creak of the old floorboard by the stairs Elise used to skip over. I sat up sometime around 3 a.m. and walked room to room. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not even like home. It felt like a story being rewritten without my name in it. I opened drawers, touched walls, ran my hands over surfaces I'd spent hours repairing, surfaces that Elise and Jordan would soon stage with fake books and neutral-tone throw pillows. I found a box of photos in the hall closet. Not the neat, curated ones, but the raw ones, Polaroids of us as kids, blurry holiday shots, Dad at the grill, Mom in the garden, me and Elise with faces full of frosting and dirt. I flipped through them like someone sorting through evidence of a life they weren't sure existed. I didn't cry. I couldn't. What settled over me wasn't sadness. It was vacancy. A hollowing out. I cancelled work appointments that week. Didn't return texts. I let food go cold. Sat on the back steps with a beer and watched the garden shrivel in the late September heat. I didn't water it. For the first time in years, I let it die. I didn't have the words to tell anyone what had happened. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their outrage. I didn't want to be seen as someone who'd been taken advantage of. I wanted silence. But the silence wasn't kind. It was full of old echoes, Dad's laugh, Mom humming to herself, Elise dragging her feet down the hallway as a teenager, yelling at me for stealing her headphones. I started packing without realizing it. Just a few boxes. Tools I'd need. Clothes. Books I cared about. I left the rest. Some things didn't deserve to follow me. The day I found the paperwork for the refinance, tucked behind a folder of insurance documents, something snapped into place. She had planned it. Maybe not maliciously. But methodically. Quietly. She'd let me believe in family while she prepared an exit. That's when the grief turned into something else. Something sharper. Not rage. Not vengeance. Clarity. The clarity didn't scream. It didn't throw things. It sat still, coiled, calm, and undeniable. I looked at the refinance agreement again. The signatures. The phrasing. The way Elise had filed everything under temporary arrangement, like it had always been a footnote. There were no accident lines, no spaces left for shared future ownership. She hadn't missed a detail. But neither had I. I spent the next week in quiet motion. I met with a local attorney, one who specialized in estate disputes. I didn't tell Elise. I didn't tell anyone. I walked into her office with a folder and walked out with a plan. The lawyer read through everything and leaned back in her chair. If you lived there for 2 years, paid for the upkeep, funded part of the refinance, and maintained the property, this isn't just unethical. It could be actionable. I nodded. I don't want to take her down. She raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? I want her to know I'm not invisible. That was the beginning. I filed a motion to pause any property transactions. The court issued a temporary injunction. Elise would get a notification in a week. In the meantime, I made a list, everything I'd paid for in the last 2 years. Receipts, invoices, before and after photos of repairs. I documented every conversation I could remember, pulled texts, emails, even calendar invites. I mapped out the full timeline. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like reclamation. And when I stood in the backyard one final time, the garden brown and cracked, I didn't mourn it. I just bent down, found the last rose that hadn't wilted, and snipped it clean from the stem. I pressed it in a book. Then I started walking forward. I didn't warn her. I didn't send a message, make a call, or ask for an explanation. I let the notice speak for itself. Elise received the court's motion 2 days before her listing appointment with the realtor. She texted me once, "What is this?" Then again an hour later, "Call me." I didn't respond. Instead, I logged into the utilities account and formally disconnected all services still tied to my name. Water. Gas. Trash. I had paid them out of my own pocket since Dad passed. Legally, I had no obligation to keep them running. The realtor canceled. The potential buyers vanished. Next, I emailed a summary of my claim to a few key contacts, our cousin Marla, Aunt Liz, and a friend of Mom's who still organized the neighborhood newsletter. I didn't editorialize. I didn't accuse. I just said, after caring for the family home for 2 years, I've been asked to leave. I'm pursuing legal mediation to protect my contributions. Within a week, Elisa's social channels went quiet. The proud partner in boutique real estate captions stopped. The stories from brunches and wine tastings with Jordan dried up. Then came the bank's inquiry. During the refinance, Elise had listed my financial support as an informal co-investment. My attorney sent a polite but firm letter asking for records of that arrangement. If she couldn't provide them, the refinance might be flagged for misrepresentation. Her silence said enough. Jordan called me, once. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was tight. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Let's find a way to fix this. I didn't reply. My attorney filed for mediated restitution. Either Elise could return a portion of the home's appreciated value, or forfeit her right to sell it without settling. She tried to stall. Said she needed more time. Filed a delay. But the paper trail was tight, and the court didn't bite. By the end of the season, the house was frozen. No sale. No cash out. And I, for the first time in years, felt like I had a say. Not loud. Not cruel. Just firm. And unshakable. It's strange, the silence that follows a decision. Not relief. Not celebration. Just the soft rustling of something shifting, internally, permanently. Elise stopped texting after the third legal notice. Jordan stopped posting motivational quotes about partnership goals and vision-driven living. Their boutique hotel project was never mentioned again. I heard through Aunt Liz that Elise moved in with a friend for a while. That she took a job in commercial interiors, low profile. No commissions. No launches. Just steady work in a firm where no one knew her history. Marla sent a message, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I told her it was okay. Because it was. Because I had stopped needing people to choose sides. I had chosen myself. The house sat dormant for months. No buyers. No showings. Grass overgrown. Porch light burnt out. I drove by once in early spring. Just once. I didn't stop. I didn't turn in. I kept driving. Somewhere in that space of distance, I stopped reliving the betrayal. I stopped replaying the conversations, the edits I wished I'd made to our last talk. I didn't need Elise to understand me anymore. She sent a letter eventually. Not through a lawyer. Just handwritten. Short. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope one day you won't carry this weight. You deserved more than what I gave. I folded it once. Tucked it into a book I hadn't touched in years. I didn't respond. There are some apologies that aren't meant to be answered. My case was closed with a quiet settlement. She paid a percentage of the value. Enough to matter. Not enough to erase what happened. But I didn't need erasure. I needed space. I needed forward. And finally, I had both. I didn't expect to see her again. Not outside of court, not outside the detached formalities we'd both leaned on. But life has a way of circling back, sometimes without warning, sometimes when you've already let go. It happened on a Sunday. I was at the hardware store picking up materials for a friend's renovation project. I turned down an aisle looking for finished nails and there she was, standing in front of a display of light bulbs, blinking up at the wattages like they might offer her direction. We locked eyes. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But I nodded. Just once. "Matt," she said softly. "Elise." She looked different. Smaller somehow. Like someone who'd been carrying something too long. "I didn't know you still came here," she said. I shrugged. "It's near my new place." A pause. "You look well," she offered. I nodded again. I am. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I know sorry doesn't fix it. I know you don't owe me anything. Her voice trailed off. I let the silence hold. She finally said, I wish I'd seen what you were holding up. Before I chose to let it all fall. I breathed in. Long and slow. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I've built something new. And there's no room in it for anything that requires me to bend backward to be loved. She nodded. Her eyes were glassy. She didn't wipe them. I hope your new place has roses, she said, almost a whisper. I thought of the tiny garden I'd planted by my back door, how they'd just begun to bloom. It does, I said. And I walked away. Not because I needed to win. But because I already had. Peace didn't arrive like a banner unfurled. It came as silence I no longer feared. It came in daily routines that had no weight to carry but their own small joy. I moved into a modest home about 15 minutes from the edge of town. Single story, faded shutters, a wide back patio that faced a thicket of trees. I built a garden in the corner with roses and thyme. My tools leaned against a shed I assembled with bare hands and stubbornness. I kept my mornings simple, coffee, a book, a quiet stretch of radio with no voices. I found work that filled me just enough, small renovations, woodwork commissions, teaching carpentry basics at the local trade school. Some days, I still thought of the old house. Not with ache, but with acknowledgement. It had been a chapter. One I closed with intent. I started writing letters I never sent. To my parents. To Elise. To the boy I used to be when I first moved back, still hoping love alone could hold a family together. I kept those letters in a wooden box on my dresser, lined with cedar chips and soft linen. I let people in, slowly. Friends I hadn't seen in years came back into orbit. I hosted dinners, nothing fancy, just roasted chicken and cracked pepper wine. Laughter returned in pieces, then whole evenings. I forgave myself, too. For missing the signs. For giving too much. For needing something Elise was never equipped to give. Peace wasn't loud. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like breath, steady, unforced. It felt like knowing I didn't need permission to rest, to rebuild, to be. And when the roses bloomed for the first time in spring, I didn't take a picture. I just stood there, hands in the soil, the light breaking through the trees. And let it be enough. In the quiet I once feared, I built a life no one could take, rooted not in approval or apology, but in presence, in peace, in the quiet certainty that I had finally come home to myself.